Well, hello everyone. You guys are stuck with me for a little bit. Morgan is having some connection issues that we've been trying to fix. Hopefully, it's nothing that we can't handle quickly, but we have an exciting topic on our hands. And thank you for everyone for joining in and for throwing different pieces of advice in the DMs and the comments and giving us more information on content because there isn't a perfect way of doing this. Hello, Andrea. Hello, hello. Yeah, we are having some connection issues. We're hoping that Morgan will be joining us soon. As you guys are jumping in, please say hi in the comments. Feel free to tag a friend or two that would appreciate some information. Can appreciate some information on content. Oh, 1 second. Never had these issues before. Hello, hello. With our topic of the day, while we're waiting for Morgan to go and join us, sorry everyone for the tech issues. What are those big burning questions you have when it comes to content? Is it from a marketing perspective of what type of content, what format, what frameworks actually generate pipeline? Is it you're looking at, hey, Jeffrey, are we looking at sales side? Do we want to go and look at, oh, hopefully Morgan will jump in here soon. Sorry, guys. We got a delayed start due to tech issues. On the sales side, are you looking for content that moves everything forward? Is that indirect strategies? Is that direct strategies? Look who decided to finally join.
Hi, everyone.
Everybody's like, oh, God, Nick, can you bring Morgan in here? We see why you have Morgan as a co-host.
It's Nick. You had to listen to Nick for a couple of minutes. I apologize, everyone. Apparently, my computer needed an extra cup of coffee this morning. So, hi, good morning. Hi, everyone.
Now you can join. Now the Power Hour has begun.
I was about to say, how was the fluff? Did you have good fluff keeping people entertained on the front end?
I'm really not finally low.
Oh gosh,
I'm not really good at the. It's like,
good morning, everyone.
This is usually Morgan's part, guys.
Yeah. Well, I will say thanks for being here, and let's get right in since everybody's been waiting for a couple of minutes while we got live. So, how to master LinkedIn content in 30 minutes is an heavily ironic title for me, Nick, because this is an hour-long show. It's not going to be a 30-minute show, but what we are going to talk about is what do you do every day to create content in 30 minutes or less, or like what are content strategies that you should be using? And we've been running a ton of experiments about this. For those of you who are new around here, we do this live show every Friday on a ton of different topics. So thanks for being here. And I think we should just dive right in, Nick. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's go.
So let's talk about the purpose of content. And I was thinking about this. Why do we create content? Why is it that we should create content on LinkedIn? And for me, the main reason is content is scalable. You are not. So, content is the main way you can build trust at scale.
Hell yeah.
So, since kind of the purpose of this whole conversation is not just how do you create great content? How do you create cool visuals? Like that's a nice sort of part of the conversation, but content should serve a purpose. And in my view, it should help build business. It should help build pipeline. Maybe you're a sales professional or you work for yourself or whatever. You need content because you only have so many hours in the day. And while you can show up to networking events and you can have DMs and you can have conversations and you can do one-on-one calls, those things are not scalable.
No.
Those things can only go so far. You only have 24 hours in the day. You're sleeping, I hope, for at least 8 of them, maybe less, but I'd recommend 8 hours. Then you're working for some part and then you want to relax for the rest. So of those, you only have so much time to make an impact. Content is the legs to your scalability of trust, because it can get in front of people whether or not you're talking to them in the first place.
That's what I was going to bring in is Gartner did a study not too long ago. I think it was published either 2020 or 2021, and they said that suppliers, sellers are not invited into the conversation until the last 19%. So
Wow.
so we're talking about,
Wow.
when we go and do our approaches that we need to do this, that, or the other thing, but all that process has already happened. A
Hmm.
lot of what we're getting taught, unless you're a demand generator and you're creating opportunity and you're setting that buying criteria and getting in there early enough, content is the only way that we get invited to the boardroom table when that individual goes, "Oh crap, like
Yeah.
there's this friction, there's this thing that's happening. I think we should probably fix this because it's costing us money." And then
Hmm.
they take it to the other buyers, other
Hmm.
people in that committee, and they're saying, "Hey, we should probably spend money on this. We should invest in this." Most deals die there.
Yes.
So if you're in
Yes.
B2B sales and you're not investing in content, more deals than you even can fathom are dying on the boardroom table undefended. And
Well,
that's
and
because we haven't created content.
exactly. That's what I was just about to say. We're on the same wavelength. Brain wavelength. Those are two words, not brave length. The we got all sorts of technical issues this morning. My brain being one of them. Um,
Warm up
anyways,
round. You got
so
this.
and let's talk about LinkedIn for a second. It's sort of thrown around, and it seems generally true that about 1, maybe 2% of people who are on LinkedIn actually create content.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 5-ish% engage. And that means they like, they comment, which
Mm-hmm.
means 95% of people, your target audience, 95% of your target audience is literally just logging onto the app every day, every week, and scrolling. That's it. That's all they're doing. And
If
this is
anybody was
why,
following Morgan's math,
yeah.
just discredit the numbers.
Yeah. No, well, hold on. Let's 1% is within the 5%, which is within the 95%. So like the people who create content also
Mm.
comment and engage, and then then there's the leftover after that. Which
Mhm.
means, and I have numbers. Over the last couple of weeks, I think my content has had 20,000 views or something like that in total. I think it's a little bit more than that.
Mhm.
That means 20-ish, or not 20,000 people, because there's going to be some people who are the same of those numbers. But
Mhm.
my name and my little photo and at least the first line of my content and tagline has appeared 20,000 times in feeds. I could not do that by myself. I am one person. You're one person, Nick. Everybody watching
Mhm.
this is one person. So, content is the way that we can get in front of our target audience without actually having to get in front of our target audience directly. It is an indirect strategy. And I had a post about that this morning. This is an indirect way to get in front of your target audience. Now, post views themselves are actually sort of a vanity metric. It doesn't really matter. It's nice to know that your content is getting delivered, but it doesn't mean much. Okay. Not in the short run. In the long run, I think it means a lot. But where we trip up, and we can start here, and
Oh, you
we have
started
stories about this.
you started on a big one.
It's a fat hot take, guys. But the the when we first started posting, when we started experimenting with LinkedIn last year, I had posts that got 3 likes, 2 comments, if that, right? And a
Mhm.
couple hundred views. And I know, Nick, you were in a similar boat around that time. You
Mhm.
had more connections and followers than I did.
Sure,
And
rub it in.
and still do. You still do. um the but the reason that people talk about consistency in content for me has two things. One is about the algorithm. The algorithm likes consistency, which is
Mhm.
important to note. But for me, it actually comes from a psychological basis, which is if 95% of the people who are in your target audience that log into LinkedIn at least once a week or every day scroll through their feed and see your name, you want them to see your name multiple times. Now, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they're going to follow you. That doesn't mean they're going to engage in your content. It doesn't mean they're going to like your post. It doesn't mean they're going to visit your profile. And in fact, as a percentage, like I think I'm at about like 5 to 10% of that total view count actually became profile views. So from my content, it's like 5% of those people actually went and looked at my profile. And maybe some percentage followed me out of that. So the reason consistency matters is not just because LinkedIn likes consistent content, but it is because you are trying to build trust with your target audience. And the way you build trust in any relationship, whether it's business, romance, friends, whatever, is you show up again and again when it matters. That's all it is. And that
Repetition.
means staying consistent actually has nothing to do with you, which is great. It has nothing to do with, oh my gosh, I have to stay consistent. It's like, no, I want to build trust with my target audience. So I need to show up consistently. And that to me is the purpose of content. It's to build trust at scale with consistency. That's all it is. And that's all it has to be. It doesn't need to be much more than that.
And there's a big psychological change that goes on in someone's brain when they start to follow you.
Hmm.
And Mason was talking about it this morning. Tom, we were talking about it yesterday. But why change? Why now? Why you is the process that somebody goes through. But when they start following you, if you're posting about something that's not status quo, it's not what they're doing, that's a big change. So how do you go and drag them to where you want them to be? Well, the
Mm.
answer is you shouldn't,
Hmm.
but we can take them on a journey by meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
Content's the easiest way to do that because what happens with content is there's also added in social proof. Hey, I just noticed that Morgan commented on that post of that guy that was, talking about that thing that I didn't agree with. But obviously, if Morgan's agreeing with them and adding to it, then there must be something to it. And the thing is, we don't notice this. We don't actually say that in our head. We
Hmm.
just go and look at what the comment was,
Hmm.
and then we evaluate it. And then what happens is we either jump in the comments, we like that person's comment, and this is what happens. Like I know Kyle Coleman had a really big post that went crazy, and it was in a comment on someone else's post that his comment got more likes and engagement than the
Hmm.
original author's post.
Hmm.
So how much credibility could that's a bad example of this because
Yeah. Well, but
highly controversial and very specific,
yeah.
but this is what happens. This is how it works. But what is the default setting for most salespeople? What do they tell you to do?
Hmm.
Go direct, go one on one. Why? Where is the advantage to that? Because everybody tells me that they're buyer centric, but they're only buyer centric when it's convenient. Is it convenient for the company to track? Is it convenient for the way the company wants to sell? Is it convenient for the tech stack that they have?
Probably not.
But content gets outside of convenience and
Hmm.
actually builds win-win because now you get to take people on a journey. And
Hmm.
when people are vulnerable, when they're transparent, they become sticky. Like Nick Bennett is incredible at this.
Yes.
He just puts himself out there, and his
Hmm.
style, he's very different than the average influencer because he's real. He uses
Hmm.
no automation and he just posts when he wants. So he doesn't necessarily follow all the tips and tricks that everybody else talks about. But because he's real, because
Hmm.
he's honest, because he doesn't overthink posts, it's super authentic. So if you followed Nick for a little while and throw it in the comments, I feel like I know him and I've only actually talked to him in the DMs a few times.
Yeah, same. Same.
But
Well, and
it works.
so let's talk about this. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about sort of here's my game plan. I wanted us to get like why content and psychology. Then we're going to talk about like pacing ourselves, how to run the marathon, and strategies to do so. And then we're going to
Okay.
talk about actually like creating content at a tactical level. So Nick doesn't pace himself. Not this Nick, but Nick Bennett, who we were just talking about, does not pace himself. He doesn't batch
Jesus,
content.
you're just shooting shooting shots at me like crazy.
I'm sorry.
Thank
I'm
you for the
sorry.
clarification.
You also don't batch content. Like, so
I'm
here's the
getting
thing.
better.
All of us have strengths. I believe this. All of us have unique strengths. And this is how we come to be really good at our jobs. And some of us like are much better with numbers. and think more analytically. Some of us need more structure. Some of us do more research. Some of us are more ready to just jump in at any moment. Some of us can map out how it's supposed to all fit together. And other people are like, yeah, it's supposed to look something like this. All of those are strengths. Whatever content procedure you use should match your strengths. So for some people, that means batching content 3 weeks in advance. I'm not that person. Some people that
I'm
means
definitely not that person.
yeah, same. Some people that means you and Nick Bennett has this famous moment in his interview with you on the podcast where he talks about he has a good idea in the shower and he hopes it lasts long enough so that when he's done with his shower, he can write it down on his phone and turn it into a post. That's how he creates content. And maybe that's how you create content. I tend to work about a week at a time because this is how I operate and how I think. So on a Friday or a Monday, I'm going to probably map out and if not write all of my content for a week. But that's what works for me. And there's a lot, and I'll just have a bone to pick with LinkedIn experts for a second. There's a lot of sort of expertise around. Well, you need to pace yourself and batch content and make sure you're on top of it. Why? Like like if you're going to force yourself on a Thursday to block out 3 hours to write content for the next month and 3 posts of those are actually good, like for me it matters that there's high
Makes me
quality
think of high
content.
school. You got to go and figure out your entire life in grade
Yeah.
9. You're like, what, 14? And you're like,
Oh
you need to
gosh.
plan out your entire life and go and set yourself up for all those courses. And then it like transpires into, or like goes into content. They're like, you need to go and plan out the next 4 to 6 months so you're aligned on your content. Yeah, but shouldn't I talk to customers and like figure
Mhm,
out what works?
mhm,
Or are you just telling me that they actually don't matter? Their engagement doesn't matter. So I can just guess and that's good enough.
mhm.
And this is why so much content fails because it's good enough in your head, but it's not trial tested. Because what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the
To the
face.
face. Exactly.
Content's no different.
So, th most of us, and I say this as, most of us who don't have 10,000 followers on LinkedIn have a problem, and that is we don't know what people like.
Mm,
So, because we don't know what people like, we tend to broaden out. We tend to try and shotgun different pieces of content and experiment, does this work, does this not work? And what that results in is anytime your face pops up in somebody's feed, it may look like a very different post, and so the algorithm learns, well, maybe this isn't the exact right author to promote. Maybe their content isn't as good for this audience.
hmm
So the standard advice here is, well, what did they say? Niche down. Find your sub niche within a niche and then create 3 content pillars based on that niche, themes, basically, topics that you can write about a lot for your target audience. And that's fine advice, but that also is based on the idea that you know what your audience wants and you know that your sub niche within a niche and the way you're positioning it, the way that you're writing it is something that your audience likes. And that's the problem. It's like a chicken and an egg. We don't know what people like, so we experiment with things. We don't get a lot of results. So then we come back to our content pillars, we revisit them, then we try something new, and then we don't get much results. And then it's this like cyclical issue where we're creating content but not getting results because the content we're creating isn't speaking to what people actually want to engage with, and we don't know how to figure it out.
We also
So
don't, we're not patient.
it dead on. Stole words right out of my mouth, Nick.
Well,
Do
and
you want
it's
to say a
hard.
little bit about that?
Well, it's hard to wait. So
Mhm.
when it's funny hearing your point of view of how you started, and I'm like, that's not the sales world of creating content. You want to do a whole bunch of planning? No, we're gonna go talk to customers because I gotta go and hit my daily activities.
Yep.
But how I started was, I could talk to one person and they have that aha moment where they stop and they start to listen. And there's, as David C. Baker and Blair Enns call it, it's the flip.
Mhm.
That now you are seeing, you hit that first insight, they're engaged, really engaged, and now you have trust because now you've proven yourself to be a credible source.
Mhm.
And so it flips. Now the whole conversation is different, but that's with one person. But
Mhm.
something you said challenged the way they thought the world worked. and challenged it in such a way and framed it in such a way that it forced them out of their habit. Their what do they call it? The
Model the
mental
yeah, like
model.
mhm,
And now they're looking at unlearning what they knew because it's not the best plan going forward.
mhm,
And that's what content does at scale.
mhm.
But if has anybody tried to build a new habit?
It's hard.
It's hard. I have to go and I don't want to get rated E on this one. But
Okay.
change management doesn't
Mhm,
happen in one post. Nobody
mhm,
bought off of one, well, maybe, but anything that's of value that's, 10,000 plus dollars or even 1,000 plus dollars wasn't bought in one post. It took a while to build that trust at scale. So how are people looking at your content? How are they evaluating it and how are they coming to trust you?
mhm,
Well, the reality is it's months.
mhm,
What did a lot of positioning experts will say it takes a year to two, depending on how niche you get, and as you say, your triangulation in the market to get known for something.
mhm.
So, how are you supposed to be creating content and become an expert in a week?
You're
How-
not.
And the
That's
algorithm doesn't favor you that way either.
mm-mm,
So, do you fight? Do you fight the algorithm,
mm-mm,
or do you just go and play to its strengths?
mhm. So what Nick is pointing to, and what you're pointing to, which I love, and which is super important for anybody who's with us today, is that first of all, it's okay to have posts not do well, and you shouldn't delete them. By the way,
No.
don't delete them. Not worth it. Um, what matters is content is a reflection of your unique insight and understanding of your market.
Mm,
So if your only interaction in a day with your target audience, with your target market is through content, it's not enough. And as a salesperson, or if you're in B2B sales, which I believe most people on this who attend this live show are, then you're going to be talking with customers, as Nick points out, and you're going to find things that are really interesting to your target audience. And sometimes that's on demo calls, and sometimes that's on discovery calls, and sometimes that's on LinkedIn DMs, and sometimes that's looking at comments on influencers that your ICPs follow and seeing what they're saying and like doing
mhm,
research and gathering those little data points and like trying to figure out a pattern. And it's okay to not, it's actually best to not have 100% certainty about what your audience believes or knows or what
mhm.
you think your audience wants, because there's always a surprise. And that means that content is a reflection of your developing understanding of what your audience wants. And so if you start creating content tomorrow and you get a couple likes and not much, and then you go have a few conversations and you go, oh, that's a really good insight. And then you turn that insight around, which we'll get to in a second, into a piece of content and post that. And then that gets more engagement. That's like a little indication. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Or it gets more views because people read, they sit on the post for a long time and they read and they think about it, even if they don't like or comment it. That's a good indication as well. So we straitjacket ourselves too much when we're first starting creating content by trying to take a methodology, content pillars, sub niche within a niche, etc., when we don't have enough deep insight and into our audience and what they need. And so we need to be willing to experiment more on the front end as we develop those insights and be able to just post consistently to get our name out there. And again, like, I want to be clear here. The goal is not to be weird about your content. Like, it's if you're B2B sales, it's probably best not to post about, like, let's just take a range of topics. You probably don't want to test Web3 and Bitcoin on the day after you posted something about, related to your industry, and then the day before that you had some, personal story that has nothing to do with your
Buffet
existing
style of
content.
content.
And right, it's sort of a Facebook style of content. It's just, that's not this approach. It is still trying to narrow our gaze within something that would be relevant to our audience, even though we're not exactly sure what specific way we need to approach that topic.
Can I
Um,
give a hack for people that want to go and test this?
Go for it, Nick.
As a thank you for sitting in through our technical difficulties, I'll give you one of my hacks that I wasn't planning on sharing.
Mm, let's do it.
Morgan, do you know why I put GIFs and why they're only 1 second usually?
Oh, go for it.
I haven't told you this. So when you go and open up the analytics and you can just click on the number on the bottom, or you can go to your posts and open up your analytics, it shows you watch time,
Mm-hmm.
but it also shows you the individual viewers. And so what I do is I subtract and figure out what was the average time that people spent on there, because they don't give you hover time.
Mm-hmm.
So I create it myself. And so yeah, I would share this one with you. So most of my GIFs get about 300 watch minutes from a second. But when they don't, why? And so what I do is I actually go and compare and contrast what happened. And what I realize is when I go and ask something that's very tactile, where the people need to go do something or they have to make a decision, unless they trust me and have been following me for a long time, I don't get comments. I might even not get likes, but the hover time will be super high.
That's super interesting. I love
And then
that.
when I hit something that's a little bit more general, that's like Margot Aaron says about something that's like that hidden copy, that's something that people are just saying in their head, I'll get a lot of engagement and really low hover time.
Hmm.
And so there's ways to go and
Mhm.
test this, and this is one of my little hacks that I don't didn't share with Morgan.
It's great. I love it. It's awesome. So, let's start transitioning. I have one final note on this, which is very important, but let's start transitioning into like actually creating content. So, if you're with us, what questions do you have about creating content, about the LinkedIn algorithm? We have some insight into how it works based on our experiments. Also, like content strategies, what kind of post types are best? How do you reach your audience? How should you create content? If you got those kinds of questions, drop them in the chat. We're going to answer them. This is your time. It's a chance for us to discuss. But very reasonably, you may ask, because we're halfway through this live show, why are you spending so much time talking about psychology, trust, strategy, insight, etc.? And this is because, and not talking at all about like how do you actually write a post and how do you do it in 30 minutes as the title promised. This is because this is where the magic sauce happens. And we've both seen this in our content, right? Where if we just kind of woke up in a day and decided to put some content out into the world, it'd be nice. It'd probably do okay. But when we have insight and we know its purpose is to build trust and we know we're going after a certain audience, it makes the content all that much better and more effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means spending this time, maybe not 80%, but certainly at least half of your time working on this section of your content, the pre work, the stuff you're doing before you actually write the post, in knowing what sorts of insights should I share? What sorts of stories are good? What sort of things are our audience looking for? And gradually refining that as you create more content, you're going to get a lot better content in the long run. And that means this is the connection here. People will trust you more. Your target audience will trust you more. And people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Trust.
And we spend a lot of time on know and like, and we don't spend too much time on the trust element. And so putting our attention on this front work allows us to build trust in the long haul with our target audience.
Can I tell a story, Morgan?
Go for it.
Anybody that is in my regular DMs knows that I love to share content.
Mhm.
If I know what you're looking to work on, Morgan knows this better than anyone else.
It's true.
I send a lot of content,
Mhm.
whether it's like long form how to articles to like the what, why, and how of something. I'm always reading. But somebody called me out for this the other day, and it made me really rethink content as a whole. So I sent them this article that I thought was brilliant, and they had just been talking about it. But all I did is I sent the link, and the preview pane on the link was garbage. It
Of
didn't
course.
actually like give very much insight, and it didn't go deep enough into why I wanted them to read it, or how it was going to help them. And I thought about it. How many times do we put out content that we know will help someone because of our experience, because of the repetition of doing what we do,
Hmm.
but fail to tell them why,
Hmm.
fail to introduce them into why it matters? if you are struggling with content and other people are telling you it's good, maybe it's because you didn't introduce it well. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
did what I did and didn't put a hook in there, or you didn't just simply state, I think this will be good for you because,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever phrase you, or however you want to phrase that.
Mm-hmm. Dead on, man. So this actually comes to creating good content. Content starts, I believe, with a takeaway. And this is my framework. There's
Yeah,
lots of frameworks
you're good at this.
how to create content. And this is my framework and this is what I use. And this is what has, if you scroll through my feed over the last couple of weeks, this is like you can see this again and again. Um, what happens is that you want a key takeaway for your audience in the post. And that's where I start. Lots of LinkedIn people say start with a hook. I don't think the hook comes after.
Mm-hmm.
You want the content to have a key takeaway. And that is usually an insight you have, a why or a how, why, when, or some sort of observation you have about the market. And the
Mm-hmm.
point of the post is to persuade in some way. It can be to share and explain and observe. There's all different approaches there. But essentially, you want your audience to take away something from your post. Now, I do that before I decide whether it's an image, text, GIF, video, whatever, because content can show up in all different ways. So I start with a key takeaway, which is, we can pull up a post even from today. Oh, like the post that I posted today is that there's 2 different ways to do outreach on LinkedIn, direct and indirect. So that's the key takeaway. And then I build around that takeaway. I write the hook. What's going to stop somebody from scrolling? And in fact, in this way, it was just there are 2 ways to do outreach on LinkedIn. That was the headline. That's the hook. Here's what they are. So you can write the hook, and then you're going to want to expand on your key insight in the post. Now, LinkedIn is, I would say, mobile optimized. And from what we've seen in our experiments is that you want people to be able to read it effectively on their phone. So walls of text don't perform as well as those couple lines at a time. The reason is it's also easier to read those lines at a time. Does that mean in 100 posts, you have to have the same exact format on every 100 posts? No, of course not, right? Like, whatever. So you don't want walls of text, though, on every single post because people gloss over it and they'll just scroll by. You want people to have those takeaways. You want them to engage. You want to be able to break things up in terms of text. Sometimes, a sort of standard copywriting principle, if you're doing a text post, is you alternate long and short sentences. So you have a long sentence and then you have a short sentence. And it's okay, in my book, if it's not grammatically proper, if you're starting sentences with and completing the thought, or it's just a full sentence that's one word. It doesn't have to be perfect. You want it to, my goal at least, is always to have it conversational. It sounds like you're having a conversation. So if I had 60 seconds in a room with my target audience, what would I say to them? And how would I say it? And then just write that down, format it a little bit, right? So starting with that takeaway, adding the hook to stop them from scrolling, and then building content out on a text post allows you to have that meat basically on text. Video is very similar in my view. Images are a great way to enhance the text post if there's a specific image. The image can also serve as a hook. So if it's a really good image, you can have a much shorter text post, but the image is the meat of the content. And there's all great examples of this inside the LinkedIn algorithm, where if you scroll, you're going to notice yourself stopping on certain pieces of content because either it has a good headline, it has a good image, or it's a very funny video. The other thing from content types, polls have been neutered. Uh,
Yeah, they're very lackluster now.
yeah, compared to their explosive reach over this last year, which is fine, but polls can still be a good opportunity for either reach or asking an insight. Or Linda Malone, who's a copywriter friend of ours, she always talks about like pick a fight as a poll. And take a controversial stand or ask a controversial question and get things going. And that's very much up your alley, Nick.
No, I've never done that
Oh,
before.
what? Never. So, like, she had asked on a poll, and you could do this as even a piece of a text or a video or an image or whatever. There's all different types here. She was like, "Is the F word okay in marketing materials?" Or like, "Is profanity okay?" And that generated a huge discussion for her piece of content. So, again, for me, the point of creating content is to give somebody something. The way that we build trust is by delivering value. And so we want to continue to show up with valuable content for the people who are with us. And the way we do that is by starting with a key takeaway. Now, I will say this in full disclosure, it takes a lot of practice to sort of nail down how the things need to read and how they need to be structured. So, my suggestion, and I mean this honestly, is take a key takeaway and write 5 different posts. Write a short post, write a 3-sentencer that could be turned into a tweet if you really want it. You know those like tweet bangers that you see every once in a while that are just like 2 lines? Start there. Write a short one. Write a key takeaway. Then do a longer one. Then do an explainer. Then do an observation. Then do whatever you will be valuable to your target audience. Alternate in terms of those formats. Now you have 5 pieces of content. Go post them through the rest of the week, or go post them over the next month. It doesn't have to be all at once. And the reason you're doing that, in my book, is not so that you have a ton of content. It's so that you're experimenting and building the muscle of creating content in the first place. And the same goes for images and videos. We've been recently experimenting on TikTok. And much like Nick's hack for GIFs, TikTok videos are actually a great hack on LinkedIn. I think it's because the algorithm doesn't know how to treat them yet, but because they're usually so short, they get a lot of watch time. And so the algorithm tends to continue to promote them. And that means that you'll get more reach on an individual video than you might sort of the standard little squares that we've produced and that other people do as well. And that's because it's short and engaging and it's good content, and it's all the same principles that you're using in all different pieces of content. So the other thing that you want to consider in terms of your content is, how can you take existing assets from your marketing team, from your company, and repurpose them into pieces of content? So we've talked about one of the main sources, as you learn more about your audience, of using content is by developing your own insights. And that's crucial. It's actually what builds your personal brand and builds trust. But one of the other things you could do is look at your existing assets from your company. And is there a blog post that you can take and simplify, or take a few pieces of content from that and then repurpose it into a video, a TikTok, an image, a piece of text, right? What you don't want to
Carousel with key
do, a
takeaways.
carousel image with help from a marketing team, or even just in Canva by yourself. What you don't want to do is take a link and then repost it on your feed. First of all, LinkedIn doesn't like links directly posted. The algorithm tends to punish them because it's to prevent people from shotgunning their content across different networks. Because if you have one blog post and then you can auto share it to all different networks, and LinkedIn's like, nah, we want organic reach, right? We want people to stay on the platform. So instead, I would take, and we've done this before, I would take key insights from a podcast episode, from a vidcast, from a webinar, or whatever, and turn them into pieces of content as another source. So what sort of existing assets do you have aside from your insights that you've developed, and then turn them into a piece of content? So that's another source. The last thing that you can consider is, think about the conversations you're having in your industry, especially among your competitors or among your peers' competitors, and start sharing stories. So instead of doing a takeaway post, instead of looking at insight, where you have something to share, you want to teach or train or educate, engage, inspire, you're instead sharing a story. And Nick, you've done this exceptionally well on a lot of your recent posts, which is, hey, this thing happened to me. Hey, I was having this conversation with, and tagged in that person, and we were talking about this. And then maybe it turns into a takeaway, but maybe it's also just a story that you're sharing. And that allows people to connect with you instead of from just like an educational perspective. It allows them to connect with you from a relational perspective. And by
Mhm.
sharing those stories, that means that you're able to connect with people, and stories inspire and motivate and engage. And those stories can be short and simple. I've seen posts about people relating, a recent moving experience with a business principle, or which is sort of inspirational or engaging, or it's a personal story in their life about like a job opportunity they had, or a hiring experience, or a sales call even, and then turning that into content. I think Andrea is with us today from AirDeck, and she's done outtakes from demo call videos before, and put them all together and then shared that out as a piece of content. To me, that's sort of like a story, like, look, this happened, this is really funny, this is a way to connect with people, that isn't just here's what I know about the world. And we all need a mixture of all of these things. We can't just settle for, we could just settle for, like, here's what I know. But because most of us don't have a deep foundational insight into what our audience actually desires, a lot of the times we need other buckets of content to provide areas for connection, to provide opportunities to build trust and have a relationship with your audience beyond, hey, I know these things. Do you want my insight?
You also got to go and play with the length.
Hmm.
One thing I don't hear enough people talk about is long form content is earned. The reason why a lot of people made a living, and there's a lot of examples of people that started on TikTok and moved to YouTube because YouTube paid their bills, but TikTok got them exposure because it was short, sweet, to the point. People learned about them and they found out that they liked them. And so you also have to vary your content length so that people can discover you and
Hmm.
makes you more approachable. It's
Hmm.
why sometimes those the Twitter bangers blow up is because anybody can consume it. Where when you do the longer form content, it should be tailored to a very specific person and their jobs to be done. And so people will self select when they start to read it because it's like, this isn't for me. That's not my jobs to be done. This won't actually help me. Nick Bennett does a great job of this. Breezy Beaumont does a great job of this. Um,
Hmm.
you they make it very simple to read, and they show that they understand what you need to do in a day.
Um, the funny thing that just popped into my head, actually, Nick, off of that. Oh no, I know.
Uh-oh.
Is you don't just settle for one kind of content. So experiment, have some fun. Like, the reason that we spent a lot of time, and I think I saw a comment about this from Susan, the reason we spent a lot of time talking about audience insight is because our content is supposed to be valuable to them. So if we don't know what our audience wants, and I'm not talking like they want marketing knowledge or they want better LinkedIn presence, I'm talking about they are currently struggling with how to do cold direct outreach to C-suite executives on LinkedIn. That's been some focus of posts recently on mine. Oh, is the doggo joining us, Nick?
She's definitely trying.
Oh, okay. We have a furry friend guest in the background in case she comes in.
You know what? I'll go and deal with her quick, and then I'll be right back.
Okay, that's fine. I have entertainment value, I hope, for everyone here today. The other thing that, part of experimenting with content and figuring out how to translate those insights is you don't necessarily know on the front end who exactly or what form exactly is going to communicate your message the best. So there's been a lot of TikToks recently as a way to sort of encapsulate a message, and it's very succinct and short, and maybe that's what works for your target audience. Or maybe your target audience has a lot of time on their hands and they're sort of twiddling their thumbs sometimes, and so long form explainers, right? So either a long LinkedIn post or a sort of preview text, and then in the comments you're dropping in a short insight, and then you're linking or you're linking in the article that you posted on a website or that your marketing team posted on a website. Those are all different ways to engage with your audience, and it's just important to experiment with that because we don't know on the front end until we try, right? And actually, Tara just commented, "Hi, welcome." But yes, trying TikTok now, had more people DM me and text me in the past 2 days than in the past 6 months. So it's while we're focusing on LinkedIn today, think about what other content is being created on other channels, and are there opportunities to riff on it? Repurposing is sort of a big word. I don't think about repurposing. I think about riffing on it. What, okay, there's this main insight. How would I tell different people this? If I was sitting down with a CEO, how would I explain it to her in, a few seconds? Or if I was sitting down with a director of finance who's in my target audience, how would I explain it to her that I was trying to, this key insight? There's different audiences. Try out, see what's going to resonate. Maybe, and then
See
you're
what
just going to
starts
continue to,
conversations.
yeah, just start conversations and see how it goes.
But I think that's the part that's missing in all of this. The reason
Mhm.
why I believe in comments is it honestly doesn't matter what platform you're on. Social media is social first. It's not a marketplace. And people can come attack me all they want. I will go and argue that easily.
Yeah.
But what it is you have a profile that tells people what it sets the expectation. You have a content strategy that gives them the insight or the knowledge they need to advance their career or avoid a failure. And then you have engagement strategies that are not some bullshit to go and get them to go and buy something. It's conversation, something that makes you more approachable. So not only you can learn, but you expand your reach.
Hmm.
And if you look at anybody that has a community in the comments on any single platform and ask them to go and book a meeting that day, they can't because they're too busy. Why are they too busy? Because they're approachable and people know what to expect of them. And so they book meetings, whether it's for them or others. Any of this strategy works on TikTok or YouTube. The thing is, if you don't invest in your community, and I would think I've been kind of playing with this, and I haven't quite got the number down, but they always say you're the average of your 5 closest friends. You are the average of your 5 most commented people.
Hmm.
Look at look how many people are following them. Look
Mhm.
at how much engagement they're getting. Funny enough, the people also viewed profiles on your LinkedIn profile. Go look at that. It's very, very close. I don't have a perfect number yet. I've been running numbers, but
Mhm.
it's
It's pretty indicative. Yep. So, the question that I get most often is, how do I deal with blank page syndrome? Okay, I want to write content. I, I'm listening to you, Morgan. It all sounds great. Yeah, be authentic. Have some engagement, base it on insights. Okay, great. I have all this content I can either create or repurpose. But like when it comes down to it, I'm like, "Huh, how do I write it? How should it look?" And my honest answer to that is, when you're building your insights, when you're taking the time and you're thinking through conversations, store them somewhere. There's this concept of a
Mhm.
swipe file where you sort of take great images or great pieces of content and you store them all in one place. Do the same thing with the conversations that you're having with your leads and prospects. If somebody says something really insightful or says something in a way you're like, oh, I've never heard that before, grab it, put on their name, put on their title, and put it into a document somewhere. Because then in a future time, you can kind of scroll through all of those things and go, huh, okay, I can talk to that. And here's how I talk to that. Or, oh, that's a really great way of saying it. Let me riff on that in an interesting way. Or take their own words and instead of saying, I was talking with a specific name from this company, say, I was talking with Roll at in California or wherever they are in the world. And they said this. And this was super interesting to me. Here's why. So we don't suffering, blank page syndrome and sort of writer's block generally comes from this idea that every piece of content that we put out into the world has to look a certain way and has to perform a certain way. And Stephanie just commented this, so this is a great segue. Stephanie says or asks, I think a lot of folks might be scared to experiment because they don't want to put out bad content that could get them deprioritized by the algorithm. What are your thoughts on that? Problem is, we don't know what bad content is. So I don't think there is such a thing as bad content. There's just content, and sometimes content performs and sometimes it doesn't. And that's dependent upon the day, the type, whether it reaches a certain audience or not. I've yet to TikTok is so this is funny because we recently did a TikTok series. TikTok's fairly good about punishing accounts that don't get a lot of engagement, but I have not seen the same to be true in the short haul on LinkedIn. Now, if you post for 6, 9, 12 months and you're still only getting 3 likes, maybe you might run into some issues. But I have yet to see LinkedIn actually like punish accounts for content that gets bad engagement. This is why you shouldn't delete your bad post, or your posts that are bad that don't get a lot of engagement, because it's actually good indication that, okay, maybe that format, maybe that specific topic didn't resonate. And I have a story about this.
Uh-oh.
As a brand strategist by trade, one of my favorite topics is positioning, and I have this framework called the positioning triangle. And if you scroll far enough back in my activity feed, you will find this post. It performed horribly compared to my normal set of content. And that was because I was experimenting with it. I was like, will the B2B marketers who follow me really like this, or like be interested in this? And it turns out maybe the day wasn't right for it, or maybe it wasn't communicated in a right way, or maybe it wasn't written in a right way. But to me, that was just a little indication of, okay, maybe this topic isn't as, even though I'm passionate about it, maybe they're not as passionate about it. Or maybe I need to tell it in a different way. And so that opened up opportunities. What are they passionate about? What should I be talking about? What should I try and either create takeaways or stories about? So I I don't think we should limit ourselves to saying the only kind of content that we put out into the world is the kind of content that should perform. Because if we only do that, we'll never learn which kind of content doesn't perform.
What did Seth Godin say? If I
Mm,
only if I only publish my best, I'd only publish like twice a year.
yeah. Uh huh.
He's like, some fail, some do okay, some do really bad, and then there's a couple that just make up for it all. So
Well.
we can't cherry pick that one because it's not up to us.
Mhm.
We've all had a post that we thought was brilliant, put it out in the world for it to be judged, and it
Uh-uh.
dropped.
Yep.
And it happens.
And Seth's famous saying, which I love and I use in my own life, is that literally, logically speaking, law of large numbers, half of my content is below average. It's just how it works, right? There's however much content, and then there's an average line through it, and then there's whatever's below average. That's fine. That just means that there's some content that's below average. That doesn't, it's not an indication of your worth. It's not an indication of whether you're a good writer or not. It's not an indication of whether you're supposed to be doing it or not. It's just there's some content that's below average. And I've had posts that go bananas that I thought were not great, honestly.
And we have to I have to add this in.
Hmm.
Reciprocation.
Yes.
If you are not commenting on anybody else's stuff and you're simply just talking at the world, all of this probably won't work. At least when you're starting. Pick 3 to 5 people, influencers or people that are about the same spot in their profession or their professional career as you. Comment every day. If you do not show up consistently in comments, you're not social.
Mm-mm.
And this is why a lot of B2B brands fail,
Mhm.
because they simply talk at the world, but they don't earn trust through conversation. And it's better to do that in a public setting versus a private setting because the rest of the world can see how you show up, how
Mhm.
you deal with problems, how you discuss different topics. And how many times, Morgan, have we been discussing something in comments and me and you going back and forth, and then somebody reaches out to us to get book a meeting that
Mhm.
wasn't even in the comments? Hey, I saw what you were commenting on so and so's post. I'd love to actually book a meeting to dive into that because that's what we're struggling with right now. Because the conversation framed the problem and made them realize that they needed a solution they just didn't know existed before that conversation.
Mhm.
But reciprocate, pick 5 people. Don't just post. If you just post, especially when you're starting, it gets tough. Because even TikTok, like I get followers just from commenting on stuff.
I know, right? um, so I know we're technically at the hour due to technical difficulties. We're going to run just a little bit over, so I hope you can stick with us to the end because you got something exciting at the end to announce. The uh, what Nick is pointing to is that just because you post content, you shouldn't expect engagement. And social media is social, and everything Nick said is dead on in my experience as well. And you should be engaging with other accounts. We forget that just because we show up doesn't mean that people are going to see us. It's an algorithm. It's not a networking event. And that means that there's a lot of opportunity to get in front of the right people, but we have to just do it in a certain way. And that means we should probably show up on their stuff first. So, to the title of today's event, the 30 minutes thing. What would I do if I only had 30 minutes to write content, let's say for a week even? And that's a challenge when you're first getting going. You may actually spend a lot longer writing and developing content, whether it's text posts or images or videos or polls or whatever else, when you first get started, because it's sort of like going to the gym. I started going to the gym. I think it was like October, November of last year for the first time in a long time. And that first week that I went back, I was so sore. I was so sore the whole time. Because I hadn't worked out the muscles in a long time. I hadn't gotten my body really super active in a long time. And the same's true on writing. We may feel that we have to like shake off the dust or we feel a little rusty. That's okay. That's just, pushing through it, working through it is how we get better. So if I had 30 minutes, here's what I do. I pull up the document with all the insights or a spreadsheet with all the insights that I have, notes that I've jotted down, conversations I've had, themes, topics, etc. that I've gotten from my audience. And that comes from conversations, as we talked about. It comes from looking through comments that your ICP is having on other accounts. It comes from your own understanding of the industry, maybe some of your marketing materials or whatever. I look at that and then I generate 2 to 3 topics. Okay. And that doesn't mean you have to write on every topic. It just gives you some options. We as humans like options. We like at least 3 options to choose from. And depending upon the day, your energy, your insight may flow to one of those options more than the other. You may have more to say about a certain topic than another. And you can also write on the fly, of course. You can always just pull out a topic like Nick Bennett does, as we talked about, and write on the fly. That's fine. But if you want a little more structure or you want it to relate it back to a bigger thing, this is what I would do. I would take a look at the topic and then I'd generate some opinions, insights, observations, and questions. And questions, especially, are actually really valuable, which is if I took a topic like cold direct outreach on LinkedIn, being that how do I get in front of C-suites and VPs using cold direct outreach? I would add some questions, right? Like, what are the best approaches? How should I create a DM that sells? Should I do it in a connection request? Should I, whatever or however that needs to work out? And then those are your posts. Those are your topics. And the same could be true. It cannot just be questions. It can also be insights and observations that you have. And that means it's almost like I want to have Nick lower his camera so we can see our furry friend, but I understand that's probably not possible. um,
And not with this setup.
yeah. Anyways, uh, and then from those topics, write some posts and just generate them. And now you have some options. And here's the thing. Here's the dirty little secret. Don't tell anyone this. You don't have to post them.
And if you want to go and stir the pot a little bit, you can just comment instead.
You don't have to post them.
You can test it in comments.
Yeah. You don't have to post them. Like the point of writing and creating content is just to get better at writing and creating content. So if you write a post, and I've done this, I have dozens and dozens of times. I've written a post and said no after I wrote it, and it's sitting in a
Yeah,
draft
you've
folder
sent it to
somewhere.
me and you're like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "God, that's good." You're like, "No, just
No,
kidding."
oh, I appreciate that. But truly, like, liberate yourself from the idea that everything you write, you have to post. Just write some stuff, answer some questions, see what procures in your head. And that's what I would spend 30 minutes doing. Take the insights, your understanding of your audience, turn it around into some topics, create some questions and insights or subtopics from that, and create some content. And maybe record a TikTok video off of it. But don't post it to TikTok, post it to LinkedIn. Or maybe find a great image that summarizes it. Or maybe you read this one newsletter yesterday from one of your favorite sites and they had this really interesting topic. And so you're going to take that, you're going to put it into your list, and then you're going to riff on it. And then in the comments, you're going to link back, hey, I was reading about this. You should check this out. There's all different ways and sources of doing this, but we just need to liberate ourselves from the idea that everything we post has to be perfect, has to be high engaging, has to have high visibility, and also has to, did I say perform really well? If I didn't, that's what I meant for the last one. Perform really well, It doesn't have to be that. Content's just content. It's just a way to connect with people.
And I can't say this enough. Go comment. Go join conversations that are already happening because there's less friction, and comment and work on developing that narrative and phrasing it in a way that people both understand and gets them excited.
Mhm.
And then don't stop there. Do it another 50 times. And what happens is you'll notice that you'll come out with different points of view that people just really like. And you can always go back to where if you're always trying to go and come up with that organically and you're always trying to create on the spot, that's hard. But if you're just having the same conversations that you've just been having in the comments for the past 3 days, that's the only way that I can go and comment or like create a post really easy. Otherwise, like my one today was a comment from yesterday that
Mhm.
went crazy. And so I thought I would share it out with the rest of the world because I know a lot of people didn't see it in my audience.
Mhm.
So test. Twitter's a great place. TikTok's a great place. There's other places, other platforms that move really fast. You can test things. Nobody says you have to get it perfect the first round because I know I surely don't.
Yeah, same, if that ain't true. All right, so for everyone here, we are hosting a Monday night workshop on this, which is an opportunity to come with us and share your content for feedback, or if you want helps rewriting, or if you want, hey, I posted this and it did really well, and all you want are some plaudits, which is 100% okay for the record. Hey,
Hmm.
I posted this and it did really well, and I'm so excited about it. We'll be like, yeah, okay.
Hmm.
If you want an invitation to that, we host it in a Zoom room. Just DM either Nick or I, and we'd be happy to pass along that invitation. We'd love to have you there to work on
Yeah.
some content and whatever you want to do. So, I even heard that in the background.
What if that cone is so bad?
Yeah, oh,
That's why you
poor,
see me
poor
like
doggo.
so
Yeah.
wipe out because she tries to go and zip through my legs, but it takes me out at the knees.
Poor doggo. So cute. All right, Nick, any closing thoughts before we finish up?
Guys, don't underestimate comments. They are gold and they are content. They also open it up the doors to social proof and leverage the algorithm. And thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
for putting up with our technical difficulties today. Thank you for being in our DMs. Thank you for commenting and being there. And those that have been with us since the start, we really appreciate you and love to see you on Mondays as well. If there's anything that you guys think of, please shoot us a DM. Remember, it's 2022. Nobody should suffer in silence. If you need help, just have to ask. And thank you. We
Yeah.
really appreciate having you here.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.